Blog Talk Radio.
Well, hello everybody. This is our first official UK radio show. It was actually scheduled 2 Saturdays ago, but unfortunately we just couldn't get the thing to work due to our severe lack of technological know-how.
And a bit of stupidity from my point, because I switched something off.
Well, that was yesterday, dear.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Because yesterday we were scheduled to go live for hopefully the second time, which would actually been the first time due to the fact we didn't manage to do it the first time around 2 weeks ago. And on that occasion yesterday, we'd actually determined the reason why it didn't work was that we did not have the mic switched on from the get-go. And apparently, if you don't have the mic switched on before the show begins, and you turn it on after the show begins, then this results, for some reason, the show not being recorded. This has baffled all sorts of people, all sorts of new friends, who, when I explained the situation to them, they simply couldn't fathom out what we'd done wrong. But it seems, after testing it, we have resolved the problem, and that is indeed the solution. And so, the UK show was scheduled for yesterday. It is every 2 weeks, and we do put it on at 7 AM Pacific Standard Time, but for this week we're doing it 1 day later, but there seemed to be a little time window where there is no other radio show scheduled, so we felt we could pop it in now rather than wait another 2 weeks. And so here we are finally, and I sure hope that this one gets recorded, otherwise I'll pull out my hair. I have a lot of hair to pull out. Which is just as well, considering the stress I'm under with all this technology. Yes, and so here we are in the UK. Here I am. My name is Kevin, and I'm with Gwen here, and we're here sharing the new you and giving references and information pertaining to the is and the real universes. The best way to begin. At the beginning, in this case, I shall do a breakdown of how I came to come to the new presentation. I will introduce myself, a little backstory, because everyone's journey to finding the new presentation is uniquely their own, very individual, and so it would begin with religion. My mother, Gwen, who's here with me now, that's her. She was involved with transcendental meditation, a religious stroke spiritual practice from India. More really a spiritual practice, I would say.
Not religious at all. But
obviously it had religious connotations, because I seem to remember it involved that four-armed blue personage who was a god. Harry Krishna, I believe.
No, Krishna didn't have 4 arms, it was someone else.
Well, another one had 4 arms. They all seemed to have far more limbs than they necessarily needed, but nevertheless, that was
the people that went were basically Hindu.
Yeah, when you talk, you might want to speak a little bit closer to the microphone in case it fails to pick up the words.
Well, that wasn't that exciting.
Anyway, so I was about 5 or 6 years old, where we became involved in transcendental meditation. There were mantras and a series of initiations, as I recall. The latter of the initiations was very expensive, in the thousands of pounds, and beyond our range of affording. That is such a word.
No.
I just made that up.
It's a good word, though.
And it involved yogic flying. And it's something that has to be seen to be believed. A practice where an individual would sit cross-legged and would then elevate themselves several feet from the ground, and they'd bounce about in this cross-legged position with effortless ease. And I remember, as I said, the initiation that I did involved a sacred word that was supposed to improve one's life. And me and my sister both would go to the transcendental meditation place with Gwen for a while. But then, actually, the real reason we were going was because we would always stop at this restaurant on our way home. That was our secret actual reason of going, but we didn't let on.
Sounds about right.
And unfortunately, that became known eventually, and we would stop going there.
Well, we stopped going there anyway, didn't we?
Yes. And Lindsay, who was my sister, then went on to do Reiki, which is a hands-on healing technique. But then that was as far as she would go, with going through the usual process that most people go through, in which they tend to start with religion, then they tend to naturally move into, it seems most people then move into more spiritual orientated pursuits, and then I suppose eventually their journey, for want of a better word, would and ought to take them to the point where they realise that everything is basically simply ideas in creation and has nothing to do with your real awareness or the real universes. And so, ultimately, regardless of whatever course I did, or thing that I undertook, I was always looking for something else. That's what moves us on. As I say, Lindsay my sister, would stop there. Her process would end pretty much, and she became immersed in relationships, building a family, and in her la-la land. And I must say, she's very vehemently opposed to anything that I say in regards to the New You presentation, to the extent that she'll literally put her fingers in her ears and make la-la-la noises, much to the amusement of the people who observe her. But I would say that's the ultimate example of cognitive dissonance, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, and it was later, through the new presentation, when I came to that much later down the road, that I learned that you could take on another person's karma by healing them with techniques such as Reiki. So I did learn Reiki 1, but I never went on to learn any further degrees of Reiki, and I'm glad I did. And apparently Gwen's pointing to herself and say that she did.
I did Reiki 1 and 2.
Yes, and with the Reiki and other things, as I said, it's with any healing technique, what you're effectively doing is you're taking on their karma, sort of thing. So it's quite an interesting situation, really. So obviously it works in the sense that they will alleviate some of your karma, but they're burdening themselves with it, and therefore they're going to feel the effects of karma that isn't even theirs. And eventually, if they carry on with their healing practices, they will take on so much karma that eventually they'll become very, very sick, and they'll probably disappear from their healing practices, and you're not likely to see them around for long. And so, really, I suppose if you don't realise that you're burdening somebody with your karma, then I suppose in a way you can't. It's not. You wouldn't really be. It wouldn't be like you were doing it for insidious purposes, and therefore doing it deliberately. But I suppose now, with the knowledge that you realise that if you get healing from somebody you're burdening them with their karma, then really you have a responsibility to not do that. Because now, not only are they taking on your karma, but you're also aware of it. So I think that's doubly bad.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway. And in fact, yes, Dwayne mentioned on one of his Skypes about one person who had a dream. And this person had a dream which revealed to this individual that it seemed the Reiki masters were in fact usurping energy on the real side. They were literally like energy vampires through their practices. And again, I mean, it's unsure whether these individuals are actually aware that they are usurping and stealing people's energy, or maybe they are. Perhaps on a higher life level, they are indeed aware of the fact they are doing this, but in their physical, astral levels of themselves, their little selves, they think they are being perfectly sincere and honourable in their practices. But that might not. But anyway, as I said, so the whole thing is very dubious, and so it's very well advised to leave Reiki and such healing modalities good enough alone.
It's very popular, though. But people don't know the effects. They just think it's healing, don't they?
Yeah, it is being very heavily sort of promoted as like one of the standard spiritual practices to be affiliated with. And I suspect the controllers realise that all it does is keep people in creation, get people overburdened with people's karma, and in fact does nothing for the individual other than shift karma back and forth, I suppose, really, from healing back and forth, and so it doesn't really resolve anything. And I mean, really, cause and effect is basically what you have earned through your decisions and the choices you have made. And so the only way to really alleviate karma, I suppose, is just to go through the process of being the effect of what you've decided to put in motion. But of course, making the connection to the real universes and singing the New You will help to dissolve karma to an extent, and things like that, and so on and so forth. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. And then started watching episodes of the X-Files, and I was captivated by the ideas of UFOs and aliens. I would spend my early teens and 20s finding out all I could about the subject matter. I'd go sky watching, go looking for UFOs and expeditions, and I'd go all over the countryside dragging my friends along with me, as unenthusiastic as they may have been to accompany me.
And they fell asleep.
Generally, yes, and they tended to give very bad directions, so likely as not we never ended up going anywhere remotely close to where we were actually intended, but nevertheless, that's what I got involved with there. Actually, one of the most fascinating things that happened to me when I was going on a UFO expedition was that we actually went to an area in Wiltshire, which is very well famous for crop circles, which manifest in the UK, primarily in the UK. I know they occur all over the world, but the UK is famous for its crop circles, and they tend to pop up around about April, May, June time, when the crops are ready to go, and we parked in front of a hillside overlooking a field, and there was nothing in the field. Then night time would descend upon us, and we sat there watching and keeping an eye out, and basically just staring fixatedly at this area of the hillside while sipping our tea and so on and so forth. And we were awake the entire night. We saw no activity, no lights, no sound of movement, nothing whatsoever. Then, when it was daytime, there was a crop circle in the field, and so it had manifested that very night, and we went to investigate. And I fell very ill, because obviously something about this crop circle was obviously upsetting me on some energetic level of myself, and it made me very sick. My parents had to come and rescue me.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And it's quite interesting. I mean, the crop circle phenomena is very real in the sense that whatever is creating the crop circle, you do have a lot of fake ones, and they have a method by which they snap and stamp the sticks down with boards of wood. But the genuine ones, you can tell they are so, because the corn, or whatever the crop is fused in such a way that it is bent over, and you cannot...
At the nodes.
Yeah, and you cannot possibly bend it back without snapping it, whereas the fake ones, they are simply snapped, and they're all floppy. And I've got some samples, and we still have them here to this day.
Yeah, we're looking at them now.
Yeah. And I think Dwayne said that basically, I think somebody actually posed the question to him, what crop circles actually are, what causes them. Because originally people assumed with the single circles, as that's how they used to manifest as, they were actually landing impressions by spacecraft. Then, when the circles became more elaborate, they then went on to say these are sort of subconscious sort of symbology manifesting from the species of humanity, and some people thought they were perhaps some form of communication. But Dwayne actually said that that basically what crop circles are is the various aliens just stamping their sort of mark on the corn, and so it would seem these are the malevolent ones doing this, almost like branding the world as theirs, you know.
Yeah.
And
we were here.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, there may be other reasons for it, but that's what, when I asked the question, that's what he said about that. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And we did all sorts of spiritual courses as well. Generally, I went there with Gwen, and because none of my friends would go with me to spiritual courses, because I had hard enough trouble taking them to see a UFO, let alone going to some of these courses that I used to do. We did the general run-of-the-mill spiritual courses. We did like the crystal courses. Tarot courses.
Mm-hmm.
Power animals. 24-strand DNA activation. And just don't ask me what 24 DNA activation actually meant. Because, I mean, as I said, I could you could possibly imagine after activating that, you'd wake up in the morning and have 3 legs or something, and think, well, that's very useful, but beyond having like an extra set of limbs, what purpose does it actually cause? I still don't know to this day what actually the purpose of that was.
No, I don't know. Most of them were nice, though, with nice people, weren't they?
Yeah, the people meant well.
Yeah.
But as we have learnt through the new presentation, that, you know, all these spiritual courses, all these healing modalities, all these funny things are basically things that have been created in creation. Anything created in creation is all they reference, and therefore if you align yourself with them and connect yourself to them and become emotionally embroiled with them, then creation, which basically the physical and astral level is as far as you will go. And so really, when you get to that point of understanding, you really have to put aside all these old spiritual courses and practices. Stop being a Wiccan, stop being a shaman, stop rattling those drums, stop playing with those beads. In fact, stop dancing around the hill with a dead dog on your head. Well, the only reason I bring that up is because one of our a shaman person we used to know years ago, a shaman teacher called Mike, he tended to have the habit of wearing a dog skin on his head, and he believed him.
It wasn't a dog; it was a wolf.
A wolf skin, and he believed himself to look very fetching indeed. And unfortunately, his opinion of himself was slightly dashed one day when he went to a powwow, and someone remarked unto him, "Hey mate, fancy having a dead dog on your head?" And suffice it to say, he did not see the funny side.
No. But we did.
Yes, the reason why I got into shamanism in the first place, I was actually fascinated with shape-shifting, of course, the ability to change into other forms. This was never a success. I never managed to achieve this, but I got pretty close because I went to a few psychic seer types, and they assured me that I had, in fact, nearly succeeded, but hadn't quite managed to get there for various reasons. And when I did put myself in these sort of trancey states and tried to actually do this and actually try to transform myself into something else, a few times I nearly did. I'm almost certain that I nearly did change into things. I became very animalistic, made all sorts of funny noises and stuff like that. But Gwen's probably thinking, well, that's what you do on a daily basis anyway, Kevin. So what's
Yes, you do. So what's new?
But it was a fascination for me. It was something familiar, in fact. It was like I'd done it before, and that's why I was very frustrated I could not do it now. In fact, I've actually found that when you do go on the astral level, when you go into your dream state and generally go into the astral level and other life levels, but in particular the astral, you do have the ability to change into anything you like. And on several occasions, when I've had dreams, I've actually changed into other creatures and beings. So it's far easier thing to do on the astral than the physical. But obviously, people still do it on the physical level. So, but with my funny shape-shifting practice, I managed to manifest some very wiry, almost insectoid-like hairs that sprouted from my chest, and I was very proud of them.
The only hair on your chest you had.
Yeah, but I still got a few of them now, and as I say, they're very wiry, almost insectoid-like. You can't even bend them. You could probably stab someone's eye out with them. In fact, if someone got close enough to my chest, I suppose. That's as close as I got to, anyway. And the next thing was sacred geometry, and it wasn't a UK-based thing, but they did a lot of the so-called ceremonies in the UK. And it was quite interesting in a way, because they spoke a lot about the reptilians. They spoke about how they ruled the earth. They spoke about how this was a mutant paradigm. They spoke about how once the human race was actually in a state of a far better state of being than they are today. They said we had far more genetic potency and a greater, and we had a much greater, more advanced civilization. And apparently, they said that the reptilians had come and they had downgraded us. And their whole idea was based on the theory and the mechanics of how a virtual reality simulation would work, in that each individual person, each individual's vehicle, is a decoding mechanism which takes information, decodes it, and then sort of transmits it into a virtual reality simulation that we all collectively share. And obviously, if the information received is distorted, so therefore will be the experience in which we are a part of. And their contention was, because of the genetic downgrading, we were actually creating, as a result, a more downgraded experience that we should not have been experiencing. And their whole idea was that they were recorrecting and reactivating the dormant genetics and circuitry, and making it so that we would return to our original blueprint, and therefore put us into a new paradigm or a new sort of world as wonderful as it once was. They had an interesting theory. They actually said that we are actually a magnificent species back in the past, which is hard to believe, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
And the reptilians could not touch us because of the state of spirituality, was the word they used, that we were in. But we allowed them to do so because apparently the reptilians were doing this all over the universe. They were travelling around, hijacking worlds, taking over them, and disrupting and altering their genetics. And so the human species back then chose to allow the reptilians to come in, allow them to genetically alter them, and also to genetically become a part of them by connecting with them through their DNA and through the varying splicing techniques that they had. And this would result in the reptilians being genetically a part of the human race then, and so when through the sacred geometry the human race would return back to their original state of being, the reptilians by default would go with them because they were now intrinsically connected to them through their DNA. That was their theory. But we actually, this is a theory that was quite common. In fact, a lot of people actually thought we were downgraded from a more magnificent state. But we would learn through the new presentation and Dwayne and the guides that in fact we are a slave species that the reptilians created out of all apparently out of the smart monkeys that were there when they first came here. So we were not in fact a species that were downgraded. We were a species that were created as a slave species. And as I said, this was they had all this funny sacred. What do you want? They had all this sort of funny shapes and sacred geometry that the idea was you were to look at and it would reactivate the dormant circuitry that was lurking in everybody's subconscious and stuff like that, and return everyone back to their factory settings. But as we were saying, what they proposed wasn't even accurate by all accounts, and also no one knew where they were getting their information from. And the problem with a lot of these type spiritual courses and ideas is that they always propose that through their methods that you can end up in some new paradise, or you can return to a paradise once lost, or relocate to another area of the universe, or go to the fifth dimension, or go here or go there, and somewhere better than this place here. But the problem with this is that all you are doing is moving around in creation, and this has nothing to do with your real awareness, and certainly will not assist in any way to get you out of creation and into the real universes, or even to be aware of them. So these courses and a lot of these things speak nothing about your real awareness, and speak nothing about all the life levels, and speak nothing about the means by which you extricate yourself from the matrix. It simply gives you the option to move about in creation, and presumably even if it even works, and who knows whether it does or not. But I said, yeah. So that was the sacred geometry thing. And there were about 16 ceremonies like that. We went every year for about 5 years. And it was quite nice. The people there were quite sincere. I mean, they did all that fake hugging stuff, which I can't stand.
And Glastonbury was nice.
Yeah. There was one of these strange things with spiritual courses which used to get on my nerves. Apparently one of the prerequisites for being into spirituality was the fact you had to hug people and be seen hugging people. And a lot of it was very fake and sort of forced and stuff like that. And so I found that rather irritating sort of. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I mentioned that we also did a little shamanism as well. We got involved in some shaman courses. The teacher, which was the one who insisted on wearing dog skins on his head, and
Wicca course.
Yeah, we did a Wicca course, which was the most boring thing in the entire universe. And so even if you're interested in spirituality, you went to this particular course, I think it would put you off spirituality and things like that for life. So in a way, that person was doing people a service, because if spirituality and courses like that are basically keeping people trapped in creation, which indeed they are, because then really, if the course is very boring, then that person should be congratulated, indeed, given a medal for services to the real universe, I think, for putting people off these snares that keep people constantly reincarnating into this matrix and into the psych realms, and not going beyond the astral and physical levels, which is the only level you can be at. if you line yourself with all these spiritual courses. I did a little bit of black magic too. It may sound a little bit naughty, but I heard on one of the Dwayne's shows one of the Skype shows where he said, quite a few people have dabbled in black magic, and that just demonstrates their want to sort of keep searching and finding out what is out there. Keep pushing the boundaries and taking risks and things. And so I thought I wasn't actually going to mention that, but I thought, well, not that I'm saying I'm advising to do it, and it's certainly not an advisable practice, but people do it, and it seems to be part of the process. I had a bit of fun with it anyway. I created an energetic golem once, I was the only one that seemed to be able to see it. It would wander around with me everywhere. It would accompany me here everywhere I went. But then it would get a little bit testy and a little bit irritating after a while, and in the end I dispelled it. And the method by which I did that was there was a totem I had made that was the seat of its power, and you had to destroy that to dispel it. And I never heard from it again, as far as I know. And and it was I suppose you could call it a golem or a homunculus or something like that. Apparently, it said it's a cool trick in that you can have it secure your house, for example, and scare the daylights out of would-be burglars and things like that. And as I remember, the ancient Egyptians used to have stone golems walking around their pyramids. There are actually a lot of stories about how people, when they first entered the pyramids, obviously these stories do not reach the public ear, how they found that there were these great stone statues that would meet them. A bit of a surprise, I guess. And but then, literally, on opening the door, the things would dissolve. It was quite strange, really. It was almost like that which has animated them was contained within the pyramids, and almost the outside influence it had no bearing. But as soon as the pyramids were opened, it was almost like the homunculus was hit by the sort of the current created consciousness that was now abounded in our current time, and that wouldn't allow it to exist, basically, because in the current consciousness there would be no belief or contention that such things should be. And so I almost think that literally that was the case, and that simply made it so it wasn't able to exist anymore, possibly. But again, that's just an idea of mine, and again, ideas and creation. You could go spiral into creation forever, chasing ideas and adding ideas to ideas and finding some more ideas and adding more ideas to them. But nevertheless, it's quite fun to run down those lines. I used to make in my black magic activities too. I used to make little circles, little sort of protective circles, sort of thing. And I used to think I was perfectly safe in my circles, but thinking about it now, I probably was not. But nevertheless, and beyond my circle, it would be like a complete void when I did these certain ritualistic things, and you could see absolutely nothing, discern nothing from the outside of the circle, and then these strange creatures would be sort of pushing up against the sides of it. So I suspect, I didn't know exactly what I was doing. It seemed quite cool, but apparently the idea was it was to summon entities and summon demons and things of this nature. And so obviously probably what I was doing, I was obviously probably creating portals to the astral, I would suggest. And then, of course, when you finish, the idea is you dissolve the circle, shut down, and settle the portal, and prevent so these things don't come into the physical. So, but nevertheless, they are. I dabbled a little bit in other magical things as well, and I found a lot of the magic stuff was very boring because the rituals were very complex and very complicated and went on for hours and involved always elaborate sort of tools you had to use and funny black squares that served as altars.
Oh, you had a black cloak as well, didn't you?
Yeah, all sorts of nonsense.
Yeah.
And it was all very ridiculous. But I got bored eventually anyway, and I moved on. And the last thing I did, well, we both did, me and Gwen, before we went to the, I came across the new presentation, was astral projection. And for those who don't know, which I'm sure you do, astral projection or out-of-body experiencing is the ability to move beyond the body. And generally, most people who do this practice will move into the astral. I mean, it is possible that you can move beyond into higher life levels, but generally people go into the astral. And And it was quite a fun practice. I learnt it. I became relatively adept at doing it, sort of thing. I had my own technique. The standard technique is apparently you lie there, you put yourself in a very relaxed state, you try and switch your mind off, and then you climb up a rope or a ladder. But I found that never really worked for me. And I had all sorts of interesting experiences with it. I mean, it's a very valid source of experiences. You do see a lot of things that can give you sort of viewpoints. It's quite a dodgy practice as well, because when it mentioned, Dwayne would say on some of the Skypes that there are all sorts of astral entities and nasties and creepy things lurking about out there that know a darn sight better what they're doing than you do. When you throw yourself out into the unknown, a lot of them are waiting for you and can mess around with you and can even sever the cord that attaches you to your physical body. And you can end up with holes in your aura as well. And you can even make little portals in which these things can even follow you back into the physical. And so it's not without risk.